Everyone, this is Shubham, and in this video, I am going to tell you about the pivot table in Microsoft Excel. So let's begin with the very basic first. If you don't know what pivot is all about and why do you create pivot table in Microsoft Excel, so let me begin with the conceptual side first, so that you can understand this feature easily. Lot of employees in their workplace, for reporting purposes, they used to create pivot tables to have a quick analytics rather than applying a complex formula in that particular situation. So we are discussing about the pivot table and what is actually pivot is all about. So pivot is a verb, which means we will be doing some actions with the data. Okay. So what we actually do in the pivot tables is we do some actions with the database, right? And the majority of time we try to rotate and revolve around the databases. Okay. So this is very basic about the pivot tables, where when you create pivot tables in Excel spreadsheet, definitely the size of the Excel spreadsheet gets increased. So for example, if your database size is about 15 MB in Excel spreadsheet, if you are creating a lot of pivot tables into that Excel workbook, so what you can do is, instead of saving that Excel file in extension .xlx, you can save it on Excel as .xlsb. That is the binary format. So if you want to reduce the file size of Excel spreadsheet when you have a lot of pivots, because that increases the size, so you can change the extension of that particular file. So what actually pivot do for us is that they convert the data into summary reports and we can do some analytics. Not very much advanced analytics, just like we have in Power Pivot. But yes, up to some extent level, we can create some standard reports and that can be created in very less time. So instead of investing your time and whole day into that particular report, you can easily use these features in order to make a quick report for your boss or manager. So now we have a data set here, and in this data set you will find some multiple columns. Let me discuss the data first, and after understanding the data you will be able to create some summary reports. All right, so we have the first column here, which represents the customer names into this column. Then we have different types of products available, then different sales person who are selling those products to different customers. Then we have regions, that in which particular region the sales has been occurred. Then we have definitely the very most important column of the dates. Then we have the amount, that particular amount has been sold on which date and in which particular region. Then we have some date and time frame columns that are either month and quarter, right? So this is one of the very common databases, and I have taken this data set for my today's video, where you can understand the data easily in your case. If you are working in HR or in finance or in marketing, so you also get your business data, and that could be having some multiple columns, more than 10, 12 or 25. And we hope that the data is cleaned up, because if you get the raw data, the chances are that in the raw data, your data is not cleaned up as much, is possibly ready to make a pivot for that. So at the initial steps, when you get the data from the data source, you are required to clean the data. And there are so many techniques now available. Either you can use the text function available in Excel, if you are an advanced Excel user, you can use the Power Query to transform your data set and then going for the pivot tables. So we are assuming that our this data is being nice, ready and clean for the pivot. Now for the very first time, when you are creating a pivot table, what you are required to do is select the entire data and then go to the Insert tab, click on Pivot Table. Okay. So when you click on Pivot Table, a pop-up window will appear here. Create pivot table window, where this window is asking you to create the pivot table either in new worksheet or in an existing worksheet, right? So we want a pivot table in a new worksheet. So we will go with the default options available here and we will press OK. So when you press OK, what happens is the next step, Microsoft Excel will insert a new sheet and you will see that sheet contains a pivot table. Now, it has two sides, to the left side, which is definitely a blank, and the right side where you have a pivot table field for list. So whatever the columns were there in that data set, you will find all those fields here. And when you drag and drop any of the field in the relevant areas, your pivot table gets started developing. So it is very easy process to create a pivot. Let us understand more about it. For example, if you want to select product-wise sales, so what I can do is I have a product field here available. So I will drag and drop this field into the row areas and I will just drop it. So it is very simple with your mouse. Left click on your mouse, drag that field into that relevant section and drop here. So now you can see that there are 4 products in your data set here, and if you want to have the sales number in front of these products, so what we are required to do is we will drag sales USD field to the values. So whenever in a particular column you have the numbers such as sales numbers or a revenue number or any kind of cost, you are required to put or plot that field into the values area so that you can do some calculations. Whereas there is a choice if you want to see the report into the horizontal view or a vertical view with respect to different dimensions, you are allowed to switch the products from rows to columns, so it will create a different view. So it is entirely depend on the requirements that how you want to see the data. Now moving ahead, one more step. If the manager says to you that okay fine, I I can see the product wise sales here. What I more need is I want to see the year wise sales, so I can analyze better year wise sales. So we have a field here that is called year. So I will just drag this field and I will drop into the columns. So now you can see that on next moment, without applying any formula, your pivot table gets expanded column wise, year wise. Okay. So this is very unique and awesome feature of Microsoft Excel and one of very famous pivot tables because it will not let you require to apply any formulas or functions as we do normally in reports. Now what happens is here, if you observe in this pivot table, first the 2013 numbers and for 2014 numbers are not, we are not seeing the exact numbers here because the width of the column is not enough to show that into an entire big numbers. So what we can do is we can just expand that column width now. We can see the numbers clearly. And second thing is that if you are required to do the formatting for the numbers, you can select the entire numbers data and go to home tab and click on comma formatting. Alright. One thing you can also observe here is that there are no sales in the year 2015 which are coming as a blank, and sometimes you don't want blank cells in your pivot tables. So how to fill that blank cell in your pivots? So this is very easy. Let me tell you how to do it simply. We will right click on this any blank cell, and in this contextual menu you will find a second last option that is called pivot table options. So I will click on pivot table options and here you will see an option that is available for empty shells. So whatever you write here, that will definitely display on the blank cell in the pivot table. So if I want 0 to be replaced in this blank cell, so I have written 0 here and I will press OK. So now you can see that now these cells are not blank anymore. It is filled with a 0, right? All right. So this was very basic that how we can create a pivot table in Microsoft Excel. Moving ahead, let's move to the another option and exploring that feature that is called slicers in the pivot tables. Now, it could be possible that most of you already explored slicers, right? But those of you who are very new to stat, how we can do that, let me tell you. So now in this current pivot table, you can see product wise sales and your manager sale. I want to see only specific years sales, for example, 2014 or 15, right? So there is a choice. Either you can drag and drop that year field into filters. So whenever you want to see a particular item from a list of columns, you can drag and drop that field into the filters. So now you can see that on my pivot table, on row number 1, it is written year and all. So I can just click on the small arrow and this filter menu will appear. So I have a choice. I want to see 2014 sales. So I will just check mark on that particular item and I will press OK button. So the numbers will get refreshed. So later on, if there is any change, for example, now my boss just want to see 2016. So I can just click on that and I will press OK, right? But if you want another visual display, a different style to filter that context or the data, what you can do is you can insert the slicers. That is very easy. The first thing is that you are required to be in your pivot table. If you are outside your pivot table, that particular option will not be available. So it is mandatory to be inside the pivot table. And when you are inside your pivot table, on top right side, you will find two tabs. The first one is Analyze and the second one is Design tabs. Now, these two tabs are only visible when you are inside your pivot table. Okay. So when you go to the Analyze tab, you will find in the Filters group, there is a feature that is called Insert Slicer. So when you click on Insert Slicers, all the fields which are also available on the field list pivot table field list are also available in that slicer. So we are required to create a slicer only for one field at this particular time, and that is for the years. So I will just check mark the year field and now I will press OK. So now you can see that we have a visual display, very nice visual display, and we can just click on any of the year and you can see that this slicer is also working as a visual display and filtering the context, filtering that data and giving us the updated numbers. Right now, for example, if you are required to select more than 1 year of your specific choice, so what you can do is you can press the control key and click on that particular years. So you can select the multiple years from their slicers, right? So the slicers are very easy. Let me just quickly repeat them. Whenever you are inside your pivot tables, you will find a tab on the right side on the top that is called Analyze and click on Insert Slicers. So you will find that particular entire list, and whatever your slicers are, you can, you want to make just check mark on that. So for example, if you want to create a month of slicers, you have that particular month slicer available, right? Okay, so next part, as you know that as an Excel user, you might have worked previously on Excel charts as well. And you know that Microsoft Excel charts are useful when you want to have a data visualization and you want to have a decision making. So let's add one visualization object that is called charts. So how to insert a pivot chart so that whenever we select a different year from here, so we can analyze that how our product wise sales are growing. So what we can do is inserting a pivot chart. Again, I will go to Analyze step and I will click on Pivot Chart. Now, in the latest version of Microsoft Excel, that is my Excel 365, there is also a feature added that is called Recommended Pivot Tables. So if you don't have any idea that what kind of chart will be best suitable for this data set, a Microsoft Excel recommended pivot table suggests you to use some more pivots. Okay, so that is recommendations from the latest feature that allows you to examine your data from different angles. Okay. So for creating a chart, we will click on pivot chart and you will find a lot of different categories here. So if you are using any old version such as 2010 and 2013, you will not find many available charts such as waterfall or funnel charts or box and whiskers. Whereas in the latest version, you will find a lot of awesome categories and new charts available. So for this video, we are not focusing more on visualization, whereas we are more focusing on pivot tables. So I will start with the column chart, and now you can see that there is a column chart available on your spreadsheet, right? And now whenever you click on any of the year, so you can see that that particular numbers are also changing from the pivot table, and also that visualization is also changing. It is also changing. So you have three objects, right? You have three objects on your spreadsheet. The one is the pivot table, the second is the slicer, and the third one is the chart. There is one more feature, and it is also very interesting, that is called timelines. So you can also add timelines, and remember that in timelines you are only allowed to select the dates column. Basically, your timelines only work when you have a date column in your database. So if you have a date column in your database, so you can insert the timeline as. So let me do a quick demonstration for that. So what I will do is I will just go in again inside my pivot table, and on top right side, I will click on analyze and I will click on insert timeline. So it is giving me one field only, that is all the dates, and I will press OK. So now this is one of the very interesting, awesome features available with the pivots, that you can convert that entire timeline into different time periods. So there is a drop down menu at the right side. So when you click on that, so how you want your timeline to be shown, year wise, quarter wise, month wise, or day wise? So for example, if I want my timeline to be shown quarter wise, so I will click on quarter, so that you can see that without any formula, your timeline is being now converted into quarters, and you can just select that particular quarter of a year. And the numbers are changing from your pivot tables and from the visualizations, right? So this is how the timeline features is very interesting. Okay. So moving to where the next technique is, I will show you that how to create the report connections in order to make a quick dashboards for your manager or your boss. And that will be highly interactive features. So I hope you will find it very interesting, and you will apply after the video at your workplace. So how to create a report connections and connect to different pivots so that it could work like a dashboards, and with the clicks whole report will get changed. So the first step will be you are just required to paste that pivot to the next some blank column. So I have just copy and paste that pivot table, and I will do some changes here. So instead of products in the second pivot, let me just drag and drop the salesperson. So now I can see the salesperson wise. So we have 4 salesperson: Shubham, Yogesh, Piyush, and Ashish, and they are doing some sales. And we can also analyze product by sales and the salesperson by sales at the same time. Now, in this particular pivot table, I also want to filter according to the month. So I want to get an idea that in which particular month, how much sales has been made by each of the salesperson. So what I can do is I can insert a slicer, and that is very easy. I will go to Analyze tab and I will click on Insert Slicer. And here I have a field that is called month, and I will press OK. So now you can see that you have a visual display of month and a scroll bar to scroll down if you want to select any month from January to December. So when you click on any month, you can see that the entire pivot table get refresh. And if I want to see sales by salesperson for the month of July, so I will just click on July, right? It is very easy. Now, one thing is that how to customize that slicer as well. So if you find out that this list is very big and you want to change it into columns, into more columns. So how you can do that? So when you click on slicer, you will find on top right corner side a slicer tab where you can customize with the slicer. You can change the format of that slicer, color, background, right? And the alignment, heights and width. But here we want to exclude that stall bar. We want to make that list short, and what we are required to do is increase the number of columns. So by default, definitely the column number is 1. So we will increase the number of columns into, for example, 3. So now we can see that the vertical list has been converted into more columns, and now it is looking very good, neat and quick. Okay. So now when I click on any of them, that particular pivot is now being refreshed. And let us add one visualization to that particular pivot. So I will again go to analyze. I will click on pivot chart, and this time I will insert a column chart. And let me change the colors of that particular chart. It is very easy. You can go to the design tab on top right side and click on change colors. And let me select the red color for that. Right? All right. So now we have on this spreadsheet that we have two different sections. For example, this 3 objects, that is the pivot table on the left side, the slicer, and that the particular chart is entirely a one section, a separate section. Whereas on the right side, we have another different kind of pivot table, a slicer of a month and a chart relevant to that particular pivot. Now, what we are required to do is to connect these two sections with each other so that it would work like a mini dashboards without any formula. So for example, if I click on any of the month here, I want that this first pivot and the chart is also get updated with those respective numbers. Whereas if I come to the left side, first section, if I click on any of the year, you can see a difference. When I am clicking on the year slicer, the entire report gets updated. So my first pivot is also refreshed. My second pivot is also refreshed, and also both these visualization. Now this is particularly because by default, pivot tables has their memory cache, and when we copy and paste it, that second pivot table, so the settings has also been connected with that. So the connection is already built from one side, and we are required to check that the connection should be made from both the sides. So to create a connection, you are required to have a slicer because you can only create a connection if you have a slicer on that with that particular pivot. Okay. So let me give you a quick demonstration that how you can create connections, then join two different pivot tables with each other so that it could look like a connected report. So on this first slicer of the year slicer, I will right click on this slicer. You will find this contextual menu, and here you will find an option that is called report connections. So if you are using an older version, for example 2010 or 13, in that particular version you will find pivot table connections. But if you are using Excel 365, the option is called report connection. So when you click on report connections, so a report connection window will appear here, and you will find that there are two pivot tables on sheet 2. Pivot table 1 and pivot table 3, and both are connected. You can see a check mark on both these options, right? If we go to the second slicer, which definitely represents the second pivot table, so when I right click on this particular slicer, I will go to the report connection. And now here you will find that one check mark is missing. So we are required to click on this check mark. Okay. And I will press OK. Now what happens is both these two different pivot tables are now connected with each other with the help of slicers. So whenever I will click on any of the month, you can see that your both pivots get updated, right? And when I click on any of the year, again the pivot tables and the visualization gets updated. So within very less time, we are able to create a dashboard that contains no formula or function. And on a different kind of a time period, the numbers get filtered and you can report it to further pivot manager or any boss you got. So this is how report connection feature is very interesting, which connects your different pivots into one, and with one click your whole report gets updated on a single click. Right? That's all for today. Thank you.